need you guys to help me out, though, for today's message. If you have a phone, which my guess would be you do, pull that out. So pull out your phones, everybody, come on. Man, taking you guys to like youth ministry, make you interact a little bit. All right, with that phone, hold it up above your head. This is really just so I can see who's lying to me for this next step of the process. Okay, now the power button on the side, just turn that thing off. Everybody, seriously, I'm about to do it with mine. Look at this, wait. I don't know how to turn off. Nope, that's Siri. All right, consider it off. But here's why I had you do that. I don't know how many of you actually took the time to turn your phones off just now. But if I had to guess, there's a lot of us in this room that, man, turning your phone off for this next 20, 30 minutes is going to be a little nerve-wracking for us. Because what if we get a text? What if we get an email? What if there's something important that just happens to happen during this moment that we don't want our phone to be off? And I know for me, it's hard to turn my phone off. Not only because it's actually hard to turn my phone off, but it's hard. I feel like I have separation from the people around me on social media. I feel like, what if I miss something important? There's all of these distractions that happen in our lives that I really think are just enhanced through the phones that we carry around. And today we're talking about distraction versus devotion and the difference between the two. And we're going to kind of go through this and ask 3 different questions that kind of relate to distraction. And then we're going to finish with just asking a question of, are we distracted or are we devoted? So as I was writing this message, I got thinking through, I don't know if any of you have ever seen a walkie-talkie. Anybody ever seen a walkie-talkie? Okay, so now if you're like a hunter or like you've been in the military or something, you're like, Dom, what you're about to say is not true. I'm not talking about military grade, insane like forms of communication through like a walkie-talkie. I'm talking about your Walmart, Meijer, maybe even dollar store walkie-talkies. Now those walkie-talkies, they do an incredible job at false advertisement. If you go and look, it's like, this can reach up to 20 miles away. And it's like, yeah, if you lived in Fowlerville and there was only a field, it would reach 20 miles away. But then if you begin to read more, or you just take it out of the box and begin to actually use it, quickly we realize that unless you're standing in a field, it's not going to work the distance that it says it will. In fact, if you walk inside, you're lucky sometimes, depending on what you buy, if it even works from the upstairs to the downstairs. You're lucky if it works a room over. So then you add in even more things, like maybe you're in a busy city. You add that in the walkie-talkie, there's no shot that thing's gonna work. But you at least paid for it, so that's cool. But I think that, man, these walkie-talkies, the things that get in between the two, they end up interfering with the communication that happens. And I wonder how often that is true about your life and my life and with God. How often do we allow things to get in the middle of our communication with God? We start to slowly get further and further away, and it becomes a little bit harder to hear from God. We're not just in an empty field with no distractions anymore. We're doing just our daily lives. We have families, we have kids, we have school, jobs. We have all of these different things, and it begins to get a little bit harder to hear from God. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the difference between distraction and devotion. And where are we at in that? Are we distracted or are we devoted? So if you have your phones, pull them out, and we're going to be in Luke. That's a joke. If you pulled out your phone, I knew you lied to me. If you have your Bibles, pull those out. Luke 10 is where we're going to be. If you don't have your Bibles, that's okay. It'll be up on the screen as well. We're going to be reading from a story that if you've been around the church for any time, you've probably heard it. It's a story of 2 sisters who have an encounter with Jesus. Jesus comes and meets these 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, in their home. And that's where we're picking up. Luke 10, 38 through 42. It says this: As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." We're going to go through 3 questions that I think relate back to this passage. 3 questions about your life, 3 questions about my life, and 3 questions that ultimately I want us to walk out of these doors asking ourselves on a regular basis. The first question is this: what are the distractions today that pull you away from Jesus? What are the things in your life that pull you away from Jesus? Now, what stands out to me in this passage is Martha. She's not just like in the kitchen watching porn or taking shots. And I say that because I think it's easy to think that bad things that we can see are noticeably sin or noticeably are talked against in the Bible, that those would be the things that distract us from Jesus, from a relationship with him. But I think that if we're being honest, all too often it's actually the good things in our life that can distract us from what Jesus wants for us, that can pull us away from spending time in his presence, time at his feet like Mary was, and they can distract us from our relationship with him. Martha was in the kitchen just preparing for Jesus, preparing and doing all the preparations that had to be done for Jesus to enjoy the time that he was there. But then we see that she goes and she complains, and she's like, "Jesus, why I'm doing all of this? What about my sister?" And Jesus just tells her, "Hey, what you're doing, no, you're missing the point." And I wonder how often it's actually the good things in our lives that have the ability to distract us from Jesus. It is our family. It is our spouse. It is kids getting to school on time and to their sports on time and all the different things that have to happen. It's our jobs. It's getting the next promotion. It's our sports. It's whatever is happening in our lives. And those things are good. But I think those things also have the opportunity and the ability to step in front of and take place of Jesus if we're not careful. They have the ability to distract us from what's actually good, what's actually going to be with us the rest of our lives, and that's a relationship with him. So that's what we're talking about today, is the difference between distraction and devotion. The second question that I want to ask you guys is, what are the dangers of those distractions? When those distractions happen, when we do get taken away and distracted from just sitting in the presence of Jesus, what are the dangers that come from those distractions? Well, right away, we see that maybe it's a little bit harder to communicate with Jesus because we're not familiar with his voice anymore. We haven't just spent time with him. We've been non-present in our relationship with him because we've just been so busy. Maybe it leads to anxiety, comparison, depression, and all these other things. Now, I want to stop there because if you're in this room and you do battle with anxiety or depression, I just want to make it clear, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that if you battle with that you are separated from Jesus. I'm by no means saying that. What I am saying, though, is that, man, even if you do battle with those things and you're doing all the things that it takes to help cure that, to help just battle it, but you're leaving Jesus out, you're missing out on a freedom that can only be found through Jesus. So I firmly believe I deal with anxiety. My wife deals with anxiety. I always have. So I believe you can battle with that and have a relationship and be connected with Jesus. There's people that deal with anxiety, deal with depression, that I would say have a stronger relationship and connection with Jesus than I do. So I want to make that clear. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying if that's you that you're not connected. But what I am saying is that when we're not connected, it can lead to those things. Look at the passage. It says that Jesus says to her, "You are worried and upset about many things." And other versions, other translations, it says, "You're anxious about so many things, Martha," when only one thing really matters. and that's Jesus. So I believe if we allow these distractions to come into play and to separate us from Jesus, that absolutely those things can be enhanced in our own lives. Another area that I see just from this passage alone is that comparison can become a thing. Look at Martha. I work with youth, so I'm fairly positive I know how this conversation goes. Martha comes up and's like, Lord, do you understand what my sister's doing right now? Like, he's like, she is not doing anything. She's just sitting here while I'm doing all of the work. And now she's trying to point out, hey, this is what I'm doing. Look at all that I'm doing. Look at how I'm right. But now look at how my sister is wrong. And she's falling into this level of comparison and probably even pride to a little extent. And Jesus just says, no, you have it all wrong. Look at what she's doing. What she's doing is actually what's going to last for eternity. It's actually what matters the most right here. Oh, man. It's God. I don't know. That was a bad joke. Sorry, guys. I get distracted sometimes. Martin Luther says this: I have so much to do today, I must spend the first 4 hours in prayer. I have so much to do today, I must spend the first 4 hours in prayer. Man, there is so many things that distract us, so many things that can get in the way of our time with Jesus. So many. But someone like this that says, I have so much to do today, I must spend the first 4 hours in prayer, man, that stands out to me, because when I look at my week, when I look at my day, and I'm like, I have so much to do today, usually the first thought that crosses my mind is, when's the first time I can play video games or watch TV today? Like, I'm going to need it. Not, I have a lot to do. Let me add 4 more hours of just spending time with Jesus into the mix of this. And I wonder how often you guys are the same. How often do we look at our daily schedule, our weekly, maybe even our monthly schedule, and we're just like, I'm so busy. I have it to the minute, planned out, everything planned out. I know what I'm doing today. There's no room for anything else to come into this schedule. But how often do we leave Jesus out of that schedule? How often do we forget to put him as the first thing that's happening? Because no matter how important all of those good things are in your lives, if Jesus is left out of them, if Jesus is left out of the mix, it doesn't matter. It's not going to last forever. None of these good things will last forever, but Jesus will. So why would we leave him out of it? Why would we allow for things to distract us from him and from sitting in his presence? And it's so easy to do. Look at Martha. Jesus is literally in her home, and she's missing out on sitting in the presence of Jesus. She's in another room. She's a room over doing all of these preparations, and she is missing out. So if it's that easy to miss out on sitting in the presence of Jesus when he's literally in their house, I wonder how much harder it is to miss out on sitting in the presence of Jesus when he's not in our homes. When he's not just in human form, physical form, sitting on our couch, I wonder how much harder it is to miss out on him. Are we actually opening the Bible? Are we actually getting on our knees in prayer? Are we actually just spending time talking to him and worshiping him? Or are we missing out because we're so busy and we have so many distractions that are filling our minds and taking us away from time that could be spent with him? The third question I have for you guys is this: is your life marked by distraction or devotion? Now, if I'm being honest with you guys, there's a lot of times that my answer to this would be distraction. Like, in fact, a few weeks ago, I was preparing a message for youth, and I actually happened to be talking about Mary and Martha, and it was a different message, but I'm sitting there Saturday night, it was 3 a.m., and I'm finishing just prepping this message and making sure it's good to go for Sunday. And I remember just having this moment of being like, I'm about to stand up in front of our youth on a Sunday night and tell them, hey, spend time with Jesus, make room for Jesus to be moving in your life. But I was like, I don't know that, for sure not today, but I don't even know that this week I really spent time with Jesus. Not time separated from my job, not time separated from writing messages and planning worship nights. I think that I was just distracted, and it hit me. Man, when's the last time I actually sat in the presence of Jesus to actually be filled up, to just have a conversation with him, not to be able to prep a message for someone else to hear, but for me to take in what he has to say to me. So I closed my laptop and closed my Bible and just pushed it to the side, and I just sat there in prayer. I sat there in prayer and just began to worship God because it's what I needed. And let me tell you, there is so much power, there's so much beauty, there's something that happens when you spend time with God, when you spend time in his presence, no matter how busy you are, that's just incredible. There's something that happens that is so fulfilling, just so relieving. So I wonder, are we living a life that's marked by distraction, or are we living a life that's marked by devotion? John 12:3 says, "Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume." I love this because it's another moment in the Bible where Mary is just at Jesus' feet. She's pouring out this perfume on Jesus' feet, and she's just, all she cares about is being in the presence of him. The story continues, and we're actually going to look at how the story continues in Matthew. In Matthew 26, verses 8 through 13, it says, "When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. 'Why this waste?' they asked. 'The perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor.' Aware of this, Jesus said to them, 'Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her.'" And look, Jesus just happened to be right, because 2,000 years later, we're talking about what she did. But I love this picture of her just sitting again at Jesus' feet, pouring out this perfume onto his feet, preparing him for burial, and not caring, once again, what other people had to say. Not caring that the disciples are questioning what she's doing. She is simply just sitting in the presence of Jesus, sitting at his feet. And that is, once again, what she cares about. And I think what's really interesting is Jesus responds and says, "Why are you bothering this woman? She's actually preparing me for my burial." And I think that it shows, man, when we're connected to Jesus, when we're sitting in his presence, we hear from him. We begin to understand what he is saying. And Mary understood something that they didn't. She was preparing him for burial. She was pouring out this fragrance onto his feet. When nobody else understood, she did. And I believe that, man, sometimes it's not going to make sense to the people around us. But when we live a life that is devoted and not distracted, man, it leads us to do some things that might not always make sense. But it's incredible because we can just sit there and we can hear from our Savior. We can spend time with him, and we can just receive freedom through that. And honestly, I would say that spending time with Jesus first and then doing all the other things that are good in our lives, it adds so much beauty to even those things. It makes those things better. It makes you a better parent. It makes you a better friend. It makes you a better just worker, because you are sitting in the presence of Jesus and you are allowing him to just speak into your life and do things that only he can do. The things that you experience or learn in your time with Jesus, they're what's going to last. They're what's going to be with you for eternity. That relationship that you have with him, that is what is going to matter at the end of the day. 1 Timothy 4:8 says, "For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come." I love this verse because, man, I enjoy going and playing sports. I enjoy working out. And that honestly is something that takes quite a bit of my time. So I love just hearing that, man, what you're doing, yeah, it's fine. It's got some value. But it calls me out when I hear it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really have value compared to your spiritual growth, compared to your spiritual health. No matter how healthy you are physically, if you're lacking in the spiritual department, man, that's what's going to matter, because that's what eternity is based on. And I think that you can fill in whatever your distraction is in this passage. Your family, your spouse, your job, all these other things, fill it in where it says physical training. For this is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. There's power in those words. And it doesn't matter what you fill in there. I believe it applies to what is distracting you as well, whatever that may be. There's value in your marriage, but what about the spiritual side? If there's no spiritual growth, if there's nothing to do with Jesus, then no matter how good your marriage was, no matter how good your relationship with your family was it worth it to miss out on eternity with Jesus? Because that's what matters. Now, I need you guys to interact with me one more time. Promise it's the last time. We're getting close to the end. Who would say that they're in the busiest season of their lives right now? Anybody? Okay, quite a few hands. Who would just say they're busy? Okay, even more hands. Man, as I was writing this message, I got thinking about how when I talk to people, it doesn't matter who, what age. I talked to a middle schooler and they're like, Dom, life is just so busy. You don't even understand. It's the busiest I've ever been. It's like, okay. And then I talked to a high schooler and it's, Dom, seriously, life is so busy. You don't even understand. I got this, and this, and they just list off their to-do list. And then I sit at home and I'm like, Callie, life is so busy. You don't even understand. And then I talk to people that are older than me in completely different seasons of life with kids and families, and they're like, man, life is busy. I'm the busiest I've ever been. And it seems like there's a common trend. No matter if we're in middle school, if we're in high school, if we're just out of high school, in college, if we're married, if we have families, if we're grandparents, there's a common trend to all of this. We're all in the busiest season of our lives. And that leads me to believe it doesn't stop. Let's look at it from a little kid. What's the most important thing in their lives? I don't know. Maybe it's a blanket or something that they carry around. Maybe it is beginning to be a sport or it's their family, but that thing, they love it. If they lose it, they freak out. It ends the week. The tantrums are thrown. Get a little bit older. Now they're in middle school. Now maybe it's a friendship that's important, or maybe it's a sport. Maybe it's school. It wasn't for me. Still isn't. Then they go to the next season of life, high school. Now something else is more important. Now it's a sport. Now it's getting a varsity jacket. Now it's getting scholarships for college, for academics or sports. Now it's a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or it's your friends, or it's something else that is important to you now in a high school season of life. Then you graduate high school and you go off to college, and now you're trying to do college, you're trying to get a degree so that you can get a job that you actually want to have, and then you're realizing, college is expensive, so you're also trying to work a part-time, if not full-time job to pay off college, while you're also getting into a serious relationship and starting to talk about marriage and maybe getting engaged and all of these different things now in this season of life. And once again, it's the busiest season of life because more things got added that are important. Then you get through that season of life, and now maybe you're married. Now you have the job that you went to school for, and you love it. You're getting to do exactly what your degree was, but you also have family, and you're married, so you also have your wife or your husband's family to go and be with. And then you start to have kids. And now all of those things are still happening, but now your kids have wants and they have things that are important to them. So you're rushing around and you're trying to get them to games and to practices and to recitals and all the different things that they have. Then you get through that season. Kids are a little bit older. Maybe they can drive themselves, but you find something else that's important now. And the cycle continues to go on and on and on. As we go through different seasons, different things are important. Maybe some things got put to the side, but let's be real, more times than not, those things that used to be important are still important. It's just other things got added to those things. In our schedules, they get full, they get busy. And if we're not careful, what happens? We're distracted from spending time with Jesus. And I go through just kind of giving examples of a little kid all the way to just being an adult, because I think I also hear, man, I'm so busy this week, or I'm so busy this month, or this year it's going to be a tough one. I can spend time with Jesus next year, or next week, or tomorrow. And we begin to just push off spending time with Jesus. And no matter how much you think that you are going to get to spending time with Jesus in the next season of life, if you can't do it in the season you are in, I hate to break it to you, but it's probably not going to happen in that next season. Because it's going to be just as busy, if not busier. So start now. Ask this question of, am I devoted or am I distracted? And if your answer is distracted, then figure out how do I become devoted? What do I have to start doing to put Jesus as the priority in my life? How do I start living a life like Mary, sitting at the feet of Jesus, and that being what matters the most? Start now. Martin Luther King, he said, I got such a busy day, I got to spend 4 hours in prayer before I can start. And I'm not telling you to walk out of here, and if you are distracted, to go instantly and just open up the Bible and read for 4 hours a day. I don't know, maybe there is someone in here, but I sure as heck have not read the Bible for 4 hours a day, every single day, this past week, or really ever. So I'm not telling you to start there. If you haven't been spending any time with God, then just start by opening the Bible. Download the Bible app on your phone. The verse of the day, start by just reading that. Start by doing the whole praying before breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Start somewhere. But then know as you grow in that, start to add time to that. Start to add more time to your devotions. Add more time to your time with Jesus, because it is what is going to make the rest of life matter. It's the only thing that's going to matter in the end. I hope that these questions are not questions that we walk out of here and just kind of throw aside. I hope they're questions that we all ask ourselves daily, if not weekly. What are the distractions today that pull you away from Jesus? What are the dangers of those distractions? And then finally, is your life marked by distraction, or is it marked by devotion? Man, when we can get honest with ourselves and really begin to answer these questions, I believe if you do something about the answer to those questions, it is going to be incredible what happens for your relationship with Jesus. And that is going to overflow into the rest of the areas of your lives. There is so much freedom that is found in Jesus. But if we live a life distracted and never communicating, never just sitting in his presence, we're wasting our lives. Because Jesus, at the end of the day, is the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that is going to last for eternity. And whether you have a relationship with him or you don't, dictates whether you get to last in eternity with Jesus or not. So what are you doing today to be devoted? What are you doing today to spend time in his presence? Distraction free. What are you doing to just sit with Jesus and just pour out your heart to him and spend time with him and grow in relationship with him? Let me pray for you guys. God, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for how good you are. I thank you that you are a God that wants to spend time with us, a God that wants us to sit at your feet and just to lean on you, God. I thank you for what you're doing through the lives of the people in this room. I pray that you would continue to work in a way that only you can work, and that your presence would be seen and felt throughout each and every one of our lives. I pray that we would just begin to find ways to eliminate distractions and just spend time with you. Spend time in your presence, taking in what you have to offer and what only you can offer, God. We pray this all in your precious and holy name. Amen. Y'all are dismissed. I hope you have a great Sunday afternoon. We'll see you back here next week.